Sharon, and I'm here talking with Emily Turnbull today about her near-death experience and some of the scientific research she is conducting on near-death experiences. So I just want to introduce Emily. And Emily, if you could share what your experience was.
Okay, thank you very much, Sharon. It's lovely to be here. First of all, I should probably say that I didn't know anything really about near-death experiences before I had the experience. And I was slightly skeptical, and I didn't really give them any time. So I wasn't religious either. So what happened was I was working in a very commercial design industry, and I was just sort of getting on with my life. But one day I became really poorly. It was a very acute, just happened quite suddenly. I became very poorly, and I started to quickly go downhill. And as I was going downhill, I started to recognise the feeling that something was happening, and I couldn't fight it. And it was very similar to the feeling that I had when I was trying to give birth to my daughter. And I was, at that point, my ex-husband was told that we might not make it. And I was run down to surgery, and I had that same feeling. I was run down to surgery, and I had to have an emergency, completely knocked out cesarean. But I was having that same feeling of sort of impending, something was happening. And I didn't really know what it was, but I was feeling very, very poorly. And I went to bed, and I'd been quite sick, and I was in bed, and my boyfriend was with me. And I think we just really thought that maybe if we gave it 24 hours, everything would be okay in the morning. So we fell asleep. Well, I didn't really feel like I'd fallen asleep, but we were in bed. I was feeling so ill. I think my partner, my boyfriend, was cuddling me, and then all of a sudden I started to come out of my physical body. So I was laying flat. I was still laying flat, and I was rotating slowly, very, very slowly, upwards. But the strange thing was that my partner was also rotating with me, and he was holding on to me still. And I was feeling, all the illness feeling had completely disappeared, and I was feeling this enormous sense of love, and like nothing I'd ever felt before in my life. And I was surrounded in this amazing feeling of love, and feeling like the best I'd ever felt in my whole life. And I was slowly rotating, and my boyfriend was holding onto my face by this point, rotating with me, and he was very intentionally saying how much he loved me, and how much how sort of lucky we were, how in love we were. And then he said to me, you are love. And nobody had ever said you are love to me before. And I thought that was quite strange. And he doesn't ever speak like that. He doesn't use language in that way. And no one had ever called me love before. People had said, oh, I love you, but never you are love. And as I started rotating with him, and he was talking to me, and I was still in this cocoon of all of everything was feeling like love. It's a very different love to the love that we feel every day. So I was in this sense of love, and then I also got this amazing sense of clarity that I understood the whole reason for existence, and I knew everything. And then as I was feeling this, and I was surrounded in love, I felt my face squash against the ceiling. And as it squashed against the ceiling, I could smell the ceiling. It was very strange, and I thought, well, this is a little bit peculiar. And I stayed there for a little while, and then the ceiling was definitely a barrier. But then I slowly then rotated back down to my body, and started feeling really poorly again. The illness came instantly straight back again. I'd had this really profound experience, and the next morning I said to my boyfriend, oh, you won't believe what's happened. Can you remember this? Can you remember this? And he had no memory of it. And he said, oh, you must have just been hallucinating because you were so ill. but I knew that I wasn't hallucinating. I knew that I'd had an experience that I couldn't explain, that I'd never had before, that I describe it as the best night and the worst night of my life. I felt so ill and then so amazing. And after he said that, I sort of put it to the background for a while, because I thought, well, I don't know how to talk about this experience to people. Everybody's going to think I'm crazy. And I left it for 4 years. And then as the lockdown started, and there was everybody, and there was a little bit more time around, I thought, well, you know, I'd quite like to have that experience again. I'd really love that experience again. How can I get that experience again, but without the dying bit, without the nearly dying bit? How can I get it again? And so I started to research out of body experiences. And as I started to talk to people in those groups, I realized that maybe it didn't seem quite right. And there was something, maybe it wasn't obviously an out of body experience, but there was something more to it. And so I ended up talking to a really fantastic Italian lady doctor who'd had a near-death experience. And she said, oh, yeah, you've had a near-death experience. And she directed me to scientists who were studying this phenomenon. And I found that actually they were the only people that I was sort of willing to listen to, because I was a skeptic before this. And so I only really wanted to know about who was researching this from a science point of view. And also, were any of those scientists near-death experiences themselves? And then I would stop and I'd listen to them. And then I started to take on more and more information, which led me eventually to quitting my job and then wanting to go into the science more myself, and starting a master's in science and transpersonal psychology, consciousness and spirituality. And I'm researching now the near-death experiences of people that encounter a living person within their near-death experience, and what is the essence of that experience, and what happens to these people once they've had this experience, and also what can it tell us about our understanding of consciousness. And that's where I am at the moment, just coming up to writing all the data up.
Your experience is really fascinating, and there's a few things, even just in what you said already, that I'm curious about. One is, you said the feeling of love that you felt was different than how we feel it in our just day-to-day life. Can you talk about that a little bit, and what is the difference? What does it feel like?
Okay, now it's unusual because love was the only word I could use to describe it, and it's like an intuition to use the word love to describe that feeling. I don't think we really have human words to describe that experience, but I'd say that it's as if love is in every atom in your body. It's in every particle of you. So it's not just oh, I'm feeling a little bit, oh, I really do love you, I feel great, oh, it's so lovely to see you. It's more of it's everything, and it's not just inside you, it's every bit of you plus a little, you're in a cocoon of it. So it's and I came back with a few words that I use now that I've never used before, and I don't know really why I used them, but they just became part of my vocabulary, like using the word love to describe the feeling. But I wasn't really sure why I was using that word, because it was bigger than that. It's bigger than our understanding of it. And again, I came back and used words like the source as well, which some people use the term God, and I didn't know where that had come from. Why was I using the term source to describe where maybe we all came from, which is another subject. But yeah, I think it's very, very difficult. I think that's one of the things that we find when we come back. A lot of us can't find the correct words to describe the experiences that we've had or the feelings that we've had within those experiences. And love is the closest word, I think, for that feeling.
Like a cosmic soup that we're swimming in.
Exactly. Cosmic loving soup.
So it's interesting because, like, even the term God, you hear a lot of people describe, oh, I was talking to God, I was talking to Jesus, I was talking to whoever it was. And for a lot of people that, I used to call it the G word, like it can be so triggering because of, religious dogma and trauma that people have grown up with and have tried to break away from. So then there's a complete rejection of this idea or notion of God. Even the word is like, just not even, people don't even want to use it or hear it. So I'm curious, like for myself, I didn't grow up religious, so it also wasn't really part of my vocabulary until actually I started doing 12-step programs, and I adopted like a higher power, and I just started using the term God like in my own sort of way or context. So I think the specific definition of it or how people identify with it is so different. But is for you, do you see this as like, how would you describe this super sauce in terms of like a bigger picture? Where do you think it comes from?
Oh, that's a good question. I just want to say that I was the same. Couldn't use the word God. Could not use the word God because I wasn't religious. But there was something, and I knew there was something bigger than much bigger than me that after that experience that we'd all come from. But again, in my head, it wasn't really the God that's described in religious terms. But I think it can be different for everybody in these experiences. But to me, it feels like it's and I thought it's an energy source, really, a huge loving energy source that we probably at some point return to, and where we probably all came from. But again, it's when you have these experiences, sometimes you come back with knowledge that you don't fully understand how you've gained it, but there's definitely something in there that you get the knowledge that sort of trains your whole life and your understanding of existence. And I came back using the source being a sort of equivalent to God, of something that we all came from, and that at some point we'll all go back to. I hope that's okay.
Well, it's great. It's great. And it's beautiful that this energy is loving. And that's what listening to so many NDEs, it's like, no matter how people have passed away or could have been through overdose or suicide or other means or some kind of trauma, people always describe this feeling of love. And any suffering on the other side, or judgment that people often accredit to, like this fearful, judging God, is usually just our own perception of it. Or when we go through the life review, people often look at their past actions and judge that themselves. It's an experience that we can reflect on and see the impact that we have had in our life, both for ourselves and others. So it's really this love seems to be the predominant quality. And like you said, it doesn't seem like it's so easy to describe. And I've heard this from so many people, and in my shared death experience, that was the main message. It was like, love is miscommunicated, it's misunderstood. It doesn't have to be, romantic or sexual. And
Exactly.
I think it's kind of hard for us to fathom, because we so identify love coming from a partner or another person or a family, or maybe a mother and child, or a person and their pet. Then you can share love just unconditionally, which is so beautiful. How have you found this quality? Like, how has this experience translated into your personal relationships, both with other people, but also yourself, in this quality of love and understanding?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I tend to do is I try to remember that when it comes down to it, we're all love. I don't think I'm the only love. I think that we're all love, and so I try to think of people are here having their experiences, and so the experience eventually, whatever happens in those to those people, or however they've acted, at some point when you get down to it, when you go backwards through everything, it all comes down to love. It may not seem like that, but it's somewhere along the line, somewhere there's some love there. And so say if I was having a disagreement with somebody, a disagreement with a loved one, then now I might step back a bit, give it a little bit of a breather and try to remember, try to see this from a perspective of love. Take a deep breath and step back, and how can I react in a loving way, which doesn't mean be a doormat. So it doesn't mean just go, do whatever you want. Just be loving as much as I possibly can, compassionate and understanding, without being a doormat. So that's sort of what's happened to me. I try to look at things in a different way to what I used to, and try not to be reactionary if possible. Try to understand that everybody's here having their journey, their experience, and try not to also let it affect me too much. We're all here to learn. So I do tend to try to be a little bit more forgiving of people's actions, because I know at some point I'm going to be judging myself. And so I'd rather not look back on it and go, oh, I really messed that up. I'd rather look, my next life review, try to look back and go, I tried to understand the other person's point of view. So that is another thing. It's realizing that at some point I'm going to be looking at this again, and did I do the right thing for myself and for my
And in theory, it's not something that we even have to wait for our life review, because we judge ourselves every day, and we criticize, and there's so much talk and negative self-talk. And one of the things that I've taken from my experience is how important our thoughts are. Any thought, all day long,
extremely important. Any thought, really, really important. And self-love, I think, is one of the key things in there, as you were describing. Your thoughts towards yourself are really important.
Really important. I actually just had an experience of this morning where I started to, I don't want to say justify, but I was thinking about something that I experienced, and it's kind of like, it's almost like this doubt and disbelief and judgment starts to creep in. And it was immediately, because since my shared death experience, my sensitivity has been so much more heightened, and I'm so much more sensitive to energy, and I've been doing energy work. And as soon as I had those thoughts, it was just like this pain, just, it was like, no, like, what are you thinking? You know what your experience was. This experience is real. And it's just like, it's this, and self-doubt, it is kind of a self-hatred, because and this is a loving act, to be kind to ourselves, to be kind to ourselves and others. That is love. It's loving. So I can relate to, like, having that sort of distance between, the reaction. Not always, because I still can be
not
reactionary.
Can't be perfect. No one can be perfect.
I still get quite triggered sometimes, and just want to snap back and all that. But overall, the perspective has changed drastically. Can you talk about? You said we're talking to scientists and doctors, therapists, and it was sort of their experiences and insights that helped give you a little bit of confidence in yours. Can you talk about some of maybe either the research or what they said to give perspective on near-death experiences?
Yes. So I was quite skeptical, but I knew my experience had happened, and so I just needed some help with it. Gaining confidence is the right word for that. Initially, I found Dr. Bruce Grayson, who has been absolutely incredible and has been studying the near-death experience phenomenon for like over 30 years now. He can be found really easily online, and he explains his research fantastically. So he instantly gave me a little bit of, oh, great. So this is a real experience, and people are looking into this more. So I think I started off with Dr. Bruce Grayson, who then from that led on to Dr. Pin van Lommel. Again, he's been doing near-death experience research for over 30 years. He also fantastic, and both of these scientists have written great books on the subject. There's also Dr. Jeffrey Long, who runs something called the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation. And on his website, there are over 5,000 near-death experiences reported on there. So you can really get a feel for what's going on with these experiences and what happens to people, how people usually are transformed by them. So there's some great people out there doing fantastic work who've been a real influence. And sort of through listening to them, I've been able to find my own voice and talk about my own experience. And what I did find with my own experience, because I saw a living individual within my NDE, it was slightly different to the norm that's expected. Quite often people expect to, well, don't expect to see, but do see deceased friends and relatives, or sometimes spiritual figures. So seeing a living person was slightly different. So again, I needed to go, oh, I better get some more research into this area, because how is this different to seeing deceased relatives? And what can we find out here for people?
Yeah, which was a big reason why I was, really wanting to talk with you, because because I'd had this experience with this person that had a heart attack, and I actually saw them then later when I had my shared death experience. The person that died was looking at my life, like past, the present, and the future. So this sense of time is not real. I mean, it's very real here, in the 3D world that we live in. We do have time. We start out as babies, we grow, we become old. There is a timeline, there is an aging process, but also this idea of past, present, or future. My friend who had the heart attack, I saw him later, actually after that whole experience. I was doing an energy healing session, and he showed up in the room. He was just sitting there watching me work. And I think that in his experience of almost dying, when he was in surgery, I think he was like looking around to see, okay, who's going to help me? Who's a good person to connect with after. And somehow I got the memo, just on this field of consciousness, somehow I got the memo to reach out to him and to offer him support. So it's really fascinating. And I'm really grateful that you're doing this kind of research, because I think it's really needed. And Bruce Grayson has also been a huge inspiration for me. He's the one that gave me not directly, I don't know him, but listening to him gave me the confidence to be able to share my experience, really, so that's really important, that angle.
Fantastic. Yeah, there's so many interesting points you've made there. Again, it seems like there's no time when I'm interviewing participants that have had near-death experiences. That's often the case, that time does seem different over there. Doesn't seem to exist in the same way. Yeah, let's start a Bruce Grayson fan club, Erin. And
I'm here for it.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And again, the point that you made about, it seems like there's some kind of consciousness connection out there that needs to be looked into a little bit more, to the way that you could see him while he was having his heart attack is quite mind-blowing. And really, and it was confirmed he had a heart attack. You contacted him, you knew that he had. So yeah, we need to look into these experiences a lot more.
I was listening to another interview with a woman named Stephanie Arnold, who has been featured on a lot of different TV shows in the US, and her husband were expecting a baby. And she started to have premonitions that she was going to die giving birth. And she did end up, flatlining and passing away, and then coming back to share the story. But she also talks about this in that interview, that she had experienced other people's heart attacks. And so it's a phenomenon. Like, we're so much more connected than we realize. And I think it's the sauce. we're all swimming in the sauce. And it's the same sauce. It's the same sauce. It's just, we experience it different degrees of it, different levels of it, but we all share that field of love.
Yep,
It's
we're all
really
connected.
fascinating. We're all connected.
Just as you've been speaking recently, I've spoken to so many participants as well lately that it's all coming out. There's another lady that had premonition dreams about her dying in the same way so that you described. So fascinating.
It really is. It's an endlessly fascinating topic to me, and I think has really given me a lot of understanding and perspective, but also a deep, and I've always been spiritual. Like I've been meditating on and off my whole life since I was a child, and consistently for over 20 years. And so I've always been deeply inspired and motivated to, to grow in consciousness and develop higher states of consciousness and live as a fulfilling life as possible while I'm alive. And the idea of like out of body experiences or near death experiences, I honestly wasn't interested in. I didn't think like we don't have to leave our body to experience these things because it's who we are. We just need to expand our consciousness and experience that. But it is such a distinctly, the descriptions of people talking about near-death experiences and you having your own experience of this, it seems to just be so palpable. Like it's such a real experience. And I wonder, like for you there's a couple of questions. I actually have many questions, but as a skeptic, I'm sure you've looked at yours, like, do you think you really died or were close to death, like physically? And then the research that you're doing about, seeing people who are still alive in an experience, you were seeing this in experiencing your boyfriend. And I've shared with you in other conversations that I kind of feel like it's totally possible and even kind of logical that we might see people who are still alive, because if your boyfriend was asleep, for example, his consciousness could be exploring the astral realm. He doesn't even have to remember it. We do this every night. all of us, we dream and we explore other dimensions in our dreams. Not that like every dream is an experience, but I've certainly had that many, many times where I know that was an experience. I was traveling in the astral realm or something. So how do you like know that this was a near death experience, that you were like dying or dead, and was this your boyfriend or how do you know?
Well, so yes, I was very poorly, and maybe if I hadn't have had the previous experience of my heart rate dropping very quickly when I was in the hospital going to give birth to my daughter, and the nurse there said to my husband at the time, there's a chance that they might not, neither of them are going to make this. And I knew that it was bad at the time, and I knew the feeling, but I wasn't told that. He was told that. But I had the feeling like, oh, this is something's going on and it's big. And because I had that same feeling, then I knew, oh, this is that same feeling that I had just before I was about to die in the hospital. And so I knew that I was very close to death, and because of that recognition of that feeling. But it was just, and because it was such a profound experience, it was like nothing I'd ever had before. And what I find myself describing it as is it was more real than real. So when everything was very clear when I was out of my body, much clearer than normal, and I understood everything made sense, much clearer than normal. And when I came into my body, it was as if there was a bit of a cloud. I call it like a walk. I call being our everyday human experience is mentally sort of like walking through a thick fog, in comparison to being out of the body where everything's very clear and easy to understand. It makes complete sense. And my normal experience is much more cloudy than that. So it was much more real than our real everyday life. But even then, because of being a skeptic, I was still sort of like, oh, what was this experience? Because I didn't really understand it, because I'd not looked into it before. And that's why I initially looked into the out of body experience to get a bit of a grasp. And then when it was confirmed that it wasn't really most likely to be that, and I'd already had that experience of dying in hospital, of just virtually dying in hospital, then I was like, oh yes, of course it was a near-death experience. And why was my partner there? Why was he with me in this experience? And this has been a question that I've been trying to answer. And I don't know whether I'll ever really answer it, but as I've looked into it more, I wonder whether it was his higher self. You know, when I came out of my body, did I then become connected to the source, or did I become a different version of me? I was still me. I was definitely me, but I was more me. And when I came back into my body, I was less me. And so I was more me when I was out of myself. And he was there. And if I was more me, then who was he? Who was he? Was he his higher self again, or was he? Was he dreaming? Or is it something that's I think they call it site-specific memory. So maybe if he has a near-death experience, and it will all come back to him, and he'll go, oh yes, I was with Emily in her near-death experience. But maybe an experience, his own different type of spiritual experience might trigger the memory for him. But was it him, or was it maybe, I've thought about this many times, was it maybe a guide of a sort that was trying to, because he spoke so differently, was it a guide who was trying to help me through this experience and helping to give me the love and keep it nice and calm for me? Because I was a skeptic, of course. So I think if I had seen my deceased father, he died when I was 9, I would have freaked out. I would have really freaked out, because I would have been like, why are you here? And I think they try to, whoever they is, so that maybe the source tries to give you an experience that will keep you calm, so you can cope with it, so you can learn from it. From my point of view, I know not everybody has calm experiences, but I think I obviously needed that experience to be able to move on, to maybe get on the right life path, maybe. So my life has changed quite dramatically since then.
I think that's really fascinating, and I agree, like all of those theories, you know, it could have been his higher self and your higher self, because we are clouded, we're veiled, we're like, our perception is dependent on our physiology, our nervous system. And we get tired, that changes our perception. We get stressed, we get sick, you know, we store memories and emotions and trauma, and then that further clouds our perception. So it's like this whole, you know, cover of I was cut off in my brilliant monologue.
I know.
So, yeah. and then we'll continue. I have more questions. So what are ways that you find to sort of connect with the sauce, and to live a life more full of love?
Okay, so I had started, after my experience, I'd started meditating. I think meditating is always a great way to start. And meditating also through my course, which is looking into consciousness and spirituality. So breath work, also breath work's great. Also simple things like being in nature, being somewhere beautiful, can often bring on spiritual experiences. So yeah, breath work, being in nature, meditation, grounding yourself. I think those are key ways to try. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about the cats. They just know, don't they? They just know. So I definitely would give all of those avenues a bit of a look around, because that is the thing. And I found it myself that I would really like to have that experience, but without the death. And so, and I think there's always a chance that it might go wrong. And if you did try to to get that experience again via being nearly deaf, I think that would be a really bad idea. But if you can get there via breath work, which many people do, then why not? And why not do meditation? Why not? Because what harm can it do? And if it can do you some good, and if it can give you a little bit of a glimpse into that, to get that feeling, that all love feeling, then it's always worth a try, I'd say.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. And that's been, all of those things have been really important for me, and being in nature. I find like, even just like, I've had such strong experiences leaning against trees, especially in the springtime. The sap is really flowing through the trees, and that intelligence in nature is really like kind of coming back, waking back up. And I find that's a really sacred time, just connecting with nature. And whenever I've done that, where I've leaned against a tree, I can just feel the energy, and it's just like the connection, the love, the light, the energy becomes so strong and palpable.
Completely. I think that presence, isn't it? Being present in nature. So it's letting go of all those other thoughts, and really taking in all the smells and what you can see, and like you say, touching the trees, just really touching them, and getting rid of all those other thoughts, and really being present, I think is important.
It's really key. It's really key. And I was listening to another near-death experience here recently, and it was talking about how, and this was similar what I had in my shared death experience, where I could start to see like light and dark spirits, positive and negative, not necessarily good and bad, but it's just, we can go in the direction of thoughts that are loving and kind and caring, or we can spiral into fear and despair and hopelessness. And it's so hard to come out of that, that those dark feelings and thoughts do exist, and those energies do exist. So it's really like shifting again, coming back to the importance of our thoughts and the power of choice and free will that we have to shift our attention, and to do these actions with, something as simple as walking through a forest, or swimming, like swimming in a lake or ocean, or any water. For me, I find I have a lot of really profound spiritual experiences in water.
Completely. I completely agree. I mean, completely. Yeah, being in nature, being swimming, fantastic, and and yeah, that whole experience of getting in the cold water as well. How quickly do those negative thoughts disappear if you're getting in some cold water? They disappear pretty quick.
Do you do the Wim Hof method? Have you done that?
I don't. I try every now and again to put the shower on cold at the end, and so I've tried that. There is also an outdoor swimming pool not too far from me, and I did have a terrible hangover once, and next day I went and jumped in the freezing cold outdoor pool, and it was in the autumn, and it was getting quite cold, and it really did sort me out. It sorted me out quite quickly.
I actually saw, I don't remember who was talking about this. It may have been the holistic psychologist, but I could be remembering incorrectly. But they were demonstrating like a way to do a cold plunge if your whole body can't handle it. And I've had a lot of muscle issues, so doing like a full body submerging cold plunge, I think would be too much for me. But they were talking about putting the hands in like a bowl of ice water, and that can give a similar effect to your whole physiology, where it helps you build up a resistance to stress, because it's like, we're going to have stress. That's just part of life. We're going to have, things that trigger us, and that we have to sort of recuperate from and deal with. But that's one way. And then exercise also is really important for the brain. And I learned that through my experience of profound loss and trauma, like how important it is to get the blood flowing and oxygen available to the brain to deal with stress. So
definitely. I've read a couple of great books, and the body holds the score, the body keeps the score.
The body keeps the score, yeah.
Yeah, the body keeps the score, fantastic. And there's another book which I've forgotten the name of, which is really is it Levine? Someone Levine. But basically he's saying things that we can learn from the animal kingdom. So say if we just had something shocking experience, that sometimes also shaking our body. So in a similar way, can sometimes get rid of the negative thoughts or something that you're holding on to that's not making you feel that good.
That's fascinating. This is fascinating because I had this experience. My legs were so painful, I couldn't walk. And a couple of months ago, I went on a meditation retreat. And it was just like this natural response that I just started vigorously shaking my legs. Like at the end of every like meditation session, I would just sit there, and I was doing yoga and pranayama, all the breath stuff, you know, all this like Zen stuff. But then I just started like kind of violently shaking my legs. And it just felt like it was just moving everything out of them. And so I still, now I will do that. I'll just kind of sit at the edge of my bed and put my legs out and just like shake them, you know. And that's a really interesting, because I hadn't heard that from like a scientific perspective, but I think it makes total sense. We literally just shake it off. I like the Taylor Swift song, shake it off.
Shake it off. It's a natural body's response. But sometimes, say we've had an accident somewhere, have I lost you, Erin? Oh, there you are. If we're tied down, then they're trying to keep us still. That means our body can't do the shaking. It can't do the shaking, which might, which looks like it might stop the long-term trauma. If we can let your body do its thing, and shaking is one of those things. I'll give you a link to the book, because it's he studied what to do after his shaking experience himself, and Dr. Naveen, and it's really helped. So I'll find a link for you.
That's great. I appreciate that. Yeah, I definitely want to look at that. I want to hear, I think we can wrap up soon, but I do want to hear about the research that you're doing, and if there's anything that people can, do to contact you, or if you're open to that.
Yeah, I'm definitely open to speaking to people. If they'd like to know more, they're more than welcome to contact me. The research I'm doing at the moment is interviewing participants who've seen a living person, and also the living person, what was their experience, and were they part of it, like yourself, Erin? What was their experience of being part of the near-death experience? What happened from both sides? So that's in process right now. I'm also running a page called The Death Myth, so we can help people with death anxiety, really. We look at the science of near-death experiences and in the latest studies that are being done. So you can find me on Facebook or Ko-Fi or Instagram, The Death Myth. And please get involved if you need to know anything. The idea is that we can help people with death anxiety, and that please ask any questions.
Yeah, it's so important. I think this is why, I'm having discussions and talking about it, because it is really terrifying. And I can't tell you how many times I've killed, social conversations by bringing up even just any mention of death or the afterlife or anything. It's just like, okay, yeah, no, don't want to think about it. Don't want to talk about it. So a lot of people aren't ready or willing to go there, but I think having discussions, because the fact is we are all going to experience it eventually. And, there is a lot of fear and anxiety around it. I think that's one of the reasons that people don't want to talk about it. But also I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what happens, and
so much,
tremendous amount.
There's I know I was really scared of death. Before I had my experience. I really didn't want to talk about it. I also had that whole feeling like, what is this? So we're all here for just randomly, and that's it. It's just a random chance thing that we're here, and it doesn't mean anything. I think it's quite sad, and it does also have that feeling that you need to rush through things. You need to get this done. You need to get that done. You need to get, because this may be your last chance. Well, I found that people who've had the near-death experience don't tend to have that so much. They've relaxed a bit. They're not going to worry so much, because death isn't the end. So we can just all relax. We can all chill out a bit, because it's not what we think it is. So there's a lot of freedom, I think, that comes from these experiences. But but that's it. Death, fear of death, it can be ruining some people's lives. But it gives you being open about it, talk to people about it. I think does take away some of the fear. Discussing it openly with people can really help.
Yeah, I think it takes away the fear and also really gives us an understanding of how precious our time while we are alive is, because death is not the end. And this is this is an experience that we're here for, and to just, live a life where we're not doing anything that is, I've talked with so many people who are, working in hospice or are death doulas, and how many people are on their deathbed with regret of things that they didn't do, things that they were too scared to do, and this is, it's just such a precious opportunity being alive.
Completely. We need to make the most of it, enjoy it, try to have fun, as much fun as you can.
Then that's the other thing. That is where the sauce gets saucy. Is having fun and dancing, and that's one of my favorite ways to do it. Yeah.
All of those things, so important.
Yeah. All right, that's a great note to end on. So thank you so much, Emily.